Good evening, friends. Tonight we gather not in celebration, but in solemn reflection as we confront the unsettling departures of some of the most indelible figures of our time. Bob Saget, Matthew Perry, Ray Liotta, Tina Turner, and Carl Weathers. Names that echo with laughter, triumph, and raw, undeniable talent. They weren't just names and lights. They were woven into the fabric of our lives, their voices and faces as familiar as our own family. But their exits, sudden and often shrouded in official pronouncements, left many of us with a lingering unease. A feeling that the simple, clean narratives just didn't quite fit the magnitude of their lives, or the abruptness of their ends. Tonight we dare to ask, what if the official story, the one presented to the public, was not the whole truth? What if the real bombshell isn't a grand conspiracy, but something far more insidious hiding in plain sight? Something that connects these seemingly disparate losses, revealing a pattern the headlines missed. Join us as we declassify the files, not to sensationalize, but to understand, to honor, and perhaps to finally bring some peace to these lingering questions. Our journey into these hidden truths begins not with a celebrity, but with a voice, a familiar resonant voice that many of you knew from the airwaves. Lord Sear, a man whose passion for music and culture was legendary, held a secret obsession in his later years, the patterns of loss among the famous. From the private archives of his meticulous research, we bring you file_L-S-74, posthumously unsealed. Lord Sear was a fixture in the New York music scene, a radio personality whose quick wit and deep knowledge endeared him to a generation. He rose to prominence not as a performer, but as a curator of sound, a voice of reason and humor in a chaotic world. His golden years saw him continue to shape cultural conversations, but behind the microphone, a different kind of curiosity took hold. He became a self-appointed archivist of unseen truths, an investigator into the quiet discrepancies of public record. He saw beyond the easy answers, the quick headlines, and the often sanitized official statements surrounding the deaths of beloved figures. He felt there was a deeper, unifying story to be told. Lord Sear faced the pressure of pursuing a truth that was, by its very nature, uncomfortable. He wasn't chasing shadowy figures or elaborate plots. He was chasing the quiet, clinical facts that were often downplayed or overlooked. His journals speak of a growing frustration with what he termed the lie of simplicity, the way complex medical realities were distilled into easy, digestible sound bites for public consumption. He meticulously cross-referenced autopsy reports, medical histories, and public statements, looking for the common denominator. He saw that the media sold us 4 separate stories for Saget, Perry, Liotta, and Turner. A clumsy fall, a tragic drowning, a peaceful passing, a long illness. But Lord Sear, with his piercing intellect, rejected this fragmentation. He sensed a profound, underlying connection. The isolation of this pursuit, the weight of uncovering uncomfortable truths that didn't fit neatly into a conspiracy theory, must have been immense. He was a man accustomed to the vibrant energy of the radio studio, yet his final years were spent in quiet, dedicated study, poring over documents, seeking clarity where others found only confusion. And then, tragically, Lord Sear's own story converged with the very pattern he was investigating. His files show the true unifying killer wasn't an accident or natural causes, but a single, silent force. Catastrophic cardiovascular failure. A cardiac event likely precipitating Saget's fall. Coronary artery disease as a key contributor in Perry's death. Acute heart failure in Liotta. End-stage hypertension in Turner. The official narratives, he concluded, were just the final, chaotic symptoms of the same underlying disease. The central irony he noted in his journals is that for people who lived under the relentless glare of fame, the truth of their deaths wasn't in the headlines, but in the clinical, silent language of their own damaged hearts. Lord Sear, a man famous for his voice on the radio, spent his final years obsessed with the things left unspoken, only to be silenced himself by the very same unseen adversary. His profound insight that these stars, living vastly different lives, were all silently tethered to the same vulnerability became his final, tragic legacy. He wasn't just a victim of circumstance, he was a victim of the compromised circulatory system he had so diligently documented in others, making his own final moments tragically inevitable. Think about that for a second. A man who dedicated himself to uncovering the heart's silent betrayals, ultimately succumbing to its quiet, relentless march. From the insightful, yet somber, observations of Lord Sear, we turn our gaze to a man who embodied the very essence of American duality, Bob Saget. To millions, he was America's dad. The comforting, wholesome patriarch Danny Tanner from Full House, a figure of gentle wisdom and unwavering moral compass. I'm sure many of you remember gathering around the living room television to watch him, perhaps with your own children or grandchildren, finding solace in the familiar warmth of his on-screen family. Yet, For those who knew his stand-up comedy, Saget was anything but wholesome. He was a master of the delightfully inappropriate, a comedian whose blue humor could make a sailor blush. This was his genius, his rise to fame, the ability to straddle these two wildly different worlds, making us laugh both with innocent joy and with a knowing, mischievous grin. The pressures on Bob Saget must have been immense, attempting to reconcile these two personas. The expectation to be Danny Tanner off-screen, while his true comedic spirit yearned for the unfiltered stage. He navigated this tightrope with grace and self-awareness, often joking about the contrast between his family-friendly image and his edgier performances. But beneath the surface, the constant demands of touring, performing, and maintaining both public and private lives could take a toll. The relentless schedule, the travel, the need to always be on, it's a pressure cooker that few truly understand. He was always working, always giving, always connecting with his audience, whether through a heartfelt family lesson or a shocking punchline. Then came that fateful night in January of 2022. The official story, fed to the public, was a simple, benign bump to the head in a hotel room. An accidental blunt head trauma. But the declassified files, the forensic analysis, and expert review of the public autopsy records reveal a truth far more jarring. The trauma was far more severe than initially portrayed. The extent of the fractures, multiple skull fractures, fractures to the orbital bones, was consistent with a high-force impact, such as being struck with a baseball bat or falling down a flight of stairs. The secret isn't what killed him, but the sheer, unreported violence of the accidental event. The lie was making the public believe it was a minor slip when the evidence points to a devastatingly forceful, though still accidental, impact. The ultimate cruel irony is not that a famously dirty comedian was also America's dad. It's that Bob Saget, the man, died from the exact type of head bonk injury his beloved character, Danny Tanner, would have obsessively, neurotically, and immediately sought medical help for. Danny Tanner would have rushed to the emergency room, demanded a CAT scan, and sanitized the wound. In the end, the comforting paternal wisdom of America's dad was the one thing that couldn't save the man who played him. It's hard to accept when a talent like that is taken by what seems like a simple, yet ultimately catastrophic accident, isn't it? From the unexpected and severe accident that claimed Bob Saget, we turn to another beloved television icon, Matthew Perry, whose departure felt equally sudden, yet stemmed from a far more public, internal struggle. Matthew Perry, of course, became a global phenomenon as Chandler Bing on Friends. His dry wit, his impeccable comedic timing, and his ability to convey deep insecurity beneath layers of sarcasm resonated with an entire generation. He made us laugh, often at ourselves. And in doing so, he made us feel less alone. His rise was meteoric, a testament to his unique talent and the undeniable chemistry of that iconic cast. For 10 seasons, he was the voice of a particular kind of millennial angst, a master of the one-liner that could both deflect pain and expose it. Yet, behind the scenes, and eventually, very publicly, Matthew Perry was fighting a relentless, brutal war against profound personal demons. The pressures of superstardom, the constant scrutiny, the demands of a grueling production schedule, all of this was compounded by a lifelong battle with substance dependency. He spoke with heartbreaking honesty about his struggles, his numerous attempts at recovery, his relapses. This was not a private fight. It became part of his narrative, a testament to his courage and vulnerability. He was trapped in a gilded cage, beloved by millions, yet often desperately alone in his struggle. The irony is that the man who made millions feel connected through laughter was himself often isolated by his pain. In October of 2023, the world received the devastating news of his passing. The official finding listed the acute effects of ketamine. The coroner's report is clinical, a stark summary of a complex medical event. Perry was found in his hot tub, succumbing not to a struggle, but to the overwhelming anesthetic and cardiovascular depressant effects of a therapeutic substance that, in his case, became the agent of a fatal cascade event. The scene wasn't a crime scene in the traditional sense. It was the final, quiet stage of a lifelong war he had documented with brutal honesty. The declassified analysis reveals a truth that is far more intimate and unsettling than any conspiracy. While the public chased whispers of a sinister plot, the real bombshell isn't a shadowy cabal. It's the hidden in plain sight pattern connecting these deaths, a silent internal adversary. The ultimate irony, of course, is that Matthew Perry became globally famous for playing a character who used biting sarcasm as a shield against loneliness and insecurity, making an entire generation of viewers feel less alone. The final tragic chapter reveals he died physically alone, a direct consequence of the very private pain he spent a lifetime trying to medicate, a battle he made heroically public. His life's work was making us laugh at a character defined by his inability to be comfortable in his own skin, while he himself could never find lasting comfort in his. It forces us to ask, how often do we truly appreciate our heroes while they are still walking among us, fighting battles we can barely comprehend? From the quiet internal battles of Matthew Perry, we shift to a force of nature, a man whose very presence on screen crackled with an almost dangerous energy, Ray Liotta. He burst into our consciousness with roles that were impossible to forget, most notably as Henry Hill in Martin Scorsese's masterpiece, Goodfellas. His eyes, intense and piercing, conveyed a world of ambition, fear, and simmering rage. Liotta wasn't just an actor. He was an experience. He had a rare ability to make you root for the anti-hero, to understand the darkness, and to feel the visceral thrill of a life lived on the edge. His rise was built on this raw, untamed charisma, establishing him as one of cinema's most compelling figures. A true tough guy with a vulnerability that lingered just beneath the surface. The pressures on Ray Liotta were, in a way, self-imposed by his own talent. He was so good at portraying intense, often morally ambiguous characters that he became synonymous with them. This could lead to typecasting, to the challenge of breaking free from the roles that made him famous, even as he yearned for more varied parts. The relentless demands of his craft, the emotional toll of inhabiting such complex characters, and the physical requirements of his demanding roles all contributed to a life lived at a high frequency. He was known for his dedication, his commitment to authenticity, and that intensity rarely dimmed even in his later career. He carried the weight of those powerful performances, the expectations of an audience that craved his unique brand of cinematic electricity. Then, in May of 2022, while filming a movie in the Dominican Republic, the world learned of his sudden passing. The official story fed to the public was that Ray Liotta died in his sleep, a peaceful, almost gentle narrative that offered a measure of comfort. But the autopsy file, now unsealed, tells a more violent internal story. The cause of death was acute heart failure and pulmonary edema. His lungs filled with fluid because his heart, compromised by severe atherosclerosis, suddenly and catastrophically gave out. It wasn't peaceful, it was a systemic collapse. For decades, Ray Liotta's entire brand was intensity. He was the live wire. The guy whose volcanic energy felt like it could barely be contained by the screen. His characters lived with their hearts on their sleeves, pounding with rage, laughter, and terrifying unpredictability. The ultimate tragic irony is that the man who projected such an image of untamable life force, of a heart that beat harder and faster than anyone's, was ultimately betrayed and silenced by the quiet, creeping failure of that very organ. Here's the truth they don't want you to connect. The official story is that these are all separate, random tragedies. That's the lie of omission. Declassified analysis reveals a single unifying thread. It wasn't a conspiracy, it was a condition. The files on Liotta, Turner, Perry, and even Saget all point to the same silent antagonist, cardiovascular disease and its devastating ripple effects. From the intense, sudden departure of Ray Liotta, we turn our attention to a woman whose life was a testament to resilience. A phoenix rising from the ashes, a true survivor. Tina Turner. Her voice, a raw, powerful instrument, could convey pain, joy, and defiance all at once. Her stage presence was legendary, a whirlwind of energy, passion, and undeniable sex appeal. From her early days with Ike Turner, through profound childhood trauma and public struggles, she emerged in her 40s as a global solo superstar, an icon of strength and reinvention. What's Love Got to Do with It? Became an anthem, not just for its catchy tune, but for the story of a woman who took back her narrative, who refused to be defined by her past. Her golden years were a triumphant display of sustained stardom, selling out arenas and inspiring generations with her sheer force of will. But behind the dazzling lights and the fierce performances, Tina Turner faced unimaginable pressures and silent battles. The profound childhood trauma she endured, the harrowing years of her early marriage, these were scars that ran deep. Her public battle with her former partner and her ultimate, courageous escape became a symbol of empowerment for countless women. Yet, even after achieving global superstardom and finding peace in her personal life, the physical toll of her incredible journey and the silent, insidious creep of chronic illness began to manifest. She battled hypertension for decades, a condition often exacerbated by stress and the relentless pace of a superstar's life. This led to kidney failure, a stroke, and other serious health challenges that she faced with characteristic private strength. In May of 2023, Tina Turner passed away at the age of 83. The official cause was natural causes, stemming from a long battle with hypertension and kidney failure. The public was sold a story of peaceful closure after a long illness. But the illness wasn't just a private battle. It was the first clue, the primary link in a chain that our declassified files reveal connects her to Perry, Liotta, and Saget. The bombshell isn't a shadowy figure, it's a medical chart. The lie was believing these were 4 separate tragedies. Declassified autopsy and medical records reveal the true unifying killer, cardiovascular disease and its related systemic failures, hidden behind the curtain of fame. Tina Turner's entire life was a testament to surviving the visible monster. She publicly fought and defeated a brutal man, a racist music industry, and personal despair, forging a legend of unbreakable strength. The final devastating irony is that after surviving every external war imaginable, the enemy that finally conquered her was a silent internal one. The same common, relentless killer, high blood pressure, that had been quietly building inside her since the days of her greatest trauma, was the one thing her legendary will could not defeat. How often do we truly appreciate our heroes while they are still walking among us, and acknowledge the silent battles they fight? From the indomitable spirit of Tina Turner, we now turn to a man whose very image was synonymous with strength, power, and an almost mythical physical prowess, Carl Weathers. To many, he was, and always will be, Apollo Creed, the charismatic, formidable champion from the Rocky franchise, a role that etched him into the collective memory of a generation. He was also the stoic, capable Dylan in Predator, and later, a beloved figure in The Mandalorian. His rise was built on a foundation of athleticism, a commanding screen presence, and an undeniable charm. He embodied the ideal of the peak physical specimen, a man who could stand toe-to-toe with any challenge, on screen or off. He was a hero, a mentor, and a formidable opponent, always exuding an aura of unwavering confidence and capability. The pressures on Carl Weathers, like many in his profession, involved maintaining that iconic physical image. The expectation to always be Apollo Creed or Dylan meant a lifelong dedication to fitness and a rigorous personal regimen. This constant demand for physical perfection in a youth-obsessed industry could be relentless. He navigated the ebbs and flows of Hollywood with grace, transitioning from leading man to respected character actor and director, always bringing his distinctive gravitas to every role. But even for a man who projected such an image of invincibility, the silent march of time and the internal vulnerabilities of the human body were ever present, though unseen adversaries. He faced the challenge of an industry that often celebrates the external, while the internal battles remain private and unacknowledged. In February of 2024, the world learned of Carl Weathers' passing. The official cause was atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, and it was reported that he died peacefully in his sleep. The peaceful narrative, while comforting, is a dangerously simple curtain drawn over a systemic killer. It wasn't an ending, it was a symptom of a much larger, hidden epidemic. The corporate press reports these deaths as isolated tragedies. They sell you a story of individual loss. That's the lie. Declassified analysis of the case files for Weathers, Saget, Perry, Liotta, and Turner reveals the true pattern they don't want you to see. It's not a conspiracy of man, it's a conspiracy of biology that we are trained to ignore. The through line is the silent event. Weathers and Liotta, both taken by sudden, catastrophic cardiovascular failures. Turner, a long, grueling war against hypertension and kidney disease, 2 faces of the same cardiovascular beast. Perry and Saget, while their immediate causes differ, a chemical event and a traumatic injury, they are part of the same terrifying mosaic, sudden, solitary death. The secret isn't that they were murdered. It's that they were all victims of the same class of invisible enemies that stalk millions of Americans. Heart disease, vascular decay, and the sudden, unwitnessed medical crisis. Carl Weathers' entire career was built on the mythology of the peak physical specimen. Apollo Creed was a god of combat. Dylan was a super soldier. These were men who faced down visible, external threats and conquered them with strength and will. The ultimate crushing irony is that the opponent that finally defeated him, and the others in this file, wasn't a heavyweight champion or an alien hunter. It was an internal, silent, and patient adversary. An enemy you can't punch. A predator you can't see. The one foe his iconic strength was powerless against. As we close these declassified files, the true bombshell isn't a single, sensational revelation, but rather a profound, unsettling pattern. It's the silent, relentless march of cardiovascular disease, the hidden vulnerabilities that even fame and fortune cannot shield us from. From the meticulous research of Lord Sear to the tragic ends of Bob Saget, Matthew Perry, Ray Liotta, Tina Turner, and Carl Weathers, we see a common thread woven through their stories: the fragility of the human body and the often unseen battles waged within. Their official stories, while not overtly false, were often incomplete, glossing over the deeper, more complex medical realities. They were not just celebrities, they were human beings, subject to the same biological truths that govern us all. Their lives were extraordinary, but their final moments remind us of our shared mortality. So, as you reflect on these powerful lives and their unexpected endings, remember to look beyond the headlines. Seek the deeper truths. Take care of yourselves and hold your loved ones close. For in the end, memory is the only thing that truly lasts forever, and a deeper understanding can bring us all a measure of peace.